My parents bought a house for my sister, then handed me the mortgage papers. You've saved enough. Now it's your turn to support the family. I refused. They dragged me to court for $500,000, but the judge had only one question. You know, for 32 years, I thought I had life pretty much figured out. I'd done everything right, built a solid career as a software engineer, saved my money responsibly, and lived well within my means. But then, one family dinner shattered my entire world when my parents slid mortgage papers across the table and, with smiles on their faces, expected me to pay for my sister's $1 million mansion. Their words, "You've saved enough. It's time you help family," still echo in my nightmares. Growing up, my parents, Julia and Donald, had this relentless focus on money, especially for me. From the age of 10, my allowance came with budget spreadsheets. If I wanted new clothes or to hit the movies, I had to earn it. Summer jobs started at 15, first at the library, then an ice cream shop. Money doesn't grow on trees, Cassie. My dad would preach, practically weekly, while we dissected my savings statements. They pushed me to apply for every scholarship, and I did. Thanks to their pressure and my own stubbornness, I covered 70% of my college tuition. For the rest, I worked 2 part-time jobs, lived in the cheapest dorm, survived on ramen, and graduated with minimal loans, which I paid off in 3 years. My younger sister, Allison, lived in a completely different universe. When she wanted new clothes, Mom took her shopping. School trip? Dad wrote a check, no questions asked. Allison's allowance was just cash. No strings, no spreadsheets. Your sister is more sensitive than you, my mother would explain whenever I dared point out the blatant favoritism. Not everyone can be as naturally responsible as you are, Cassie. It was a constant refrain, one that chipped away at me. After college, I moved to Seattle, landed a job at a tech company, and slowly climbed the ladder. 10 years later, I was a senior software engineer, earning a great salary. But I stuck to my modest ways, a small 1-bedroom apartment, a reliable used Toyota I bought outright, packed lunches most days. Meanwhile, Allison's financial circus continued. She changed her college major 4 times, stretching her degree to 6 years, all on Mom and Dad's dime. After graduation, she bounced between jobs, never staying more than 8 months. Unfulfilling. Disagreement with the manager, finding herself through 3-month European trips, always an excuse. And my parents? They subsidized it all. Rent, car payments, even a $15,000 credit card debt from designer clothes and Vegas trips. Allison is still figuring things out, my father would say. Not everyone knows their path as clearly as you do. I loved my sister, but the double standard? It was infuriating. At family gatherings, she'd show up in new designer outfits, gushing about brunch spots and concert tickets, all while working part-time at some boutique that barely covered her gas. It was like living in a parallel dimension. Despite the resentment, I built my own life, worked hard, and slowly, painstakingly saved. Years later, I finally hit my goal, enough for a down payment on a modest condo in Seattle. Nothing fancy, just mine. The mortgage would even be less than my rent. I was so proud, so excited. Then came the invitation, Sunday dinner at my parents' place. April. I actually thought, maybe, just maybe, they wanted to celebrate my home buying plans. I'd mentioned it briefly, and while they hadn't seemed thrilled, I hoped for a surprise show of support. Oh, how wrong I was. I arrived precisely at 6 p.m. The familiar aroma of Mom's lasagna, my childhood favorite, filled the air. The good china was out, the kind only seen at Thanksgiving or Christmas. A bottle of wine was breathing on the counter. Cassie, right on time, as always, Mom said, hugging me. Dad greeted me too, checking his watch before pouring wine without asking. Something felt off. A weird tension in the air. Where's Allison? I asked, noticing the table was set for 3. Oh, she couldn't make it, Mom quickly chimed in. Last-minute trip to San Diego with friends. You know how spontaneous she is. Dinner was strained. My parents kept the conversation light, asking about my job, the weather, my book. But they were distracted. Dad kept checking his watch. Mom kept refilling my wine glass, even when it was barely half empty. After the main course, instead of dessert, Mom cleared the plates and sat back down. Dad cleared his throat, straightened, and folded his hands on the table. Cassie, he began, his voice oddly formal, we have some exciting news. We've helped Allison buy a house. I genuinely blinked. Oh, that's big news. I had no idea she was looking or that she'd saved enough for a down payment. My mother laughed a little too brightly. Well, you know your sister. When she falls in love with something, she just goes for it. She found this absolutely perfect place in the West Hills neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, a gorgeous view, walking distance to all those cute shops. I nearly choked on my wine. West Hills. One of the most expensive neighborhoods in Portland. That sounds expensive, I managed to say. It's an investment in her future, Dad stated, firm. The housing market is only going up, and it's a good neighborhood. The schools are excellent. Schools. I echoed, confused. Is Allison planning to have kids soon? Is she even dating anyone seriously? Last I heard, she was still very much enjoying the single life. My parents exchanged another look. Mom grabbed a folder from the sideboard and slid it across the table toward me. The thing is, Cassie, Dad continued, we took out the mortgage in our names. Since Allison's credit isn't, well, you know how it is. But we've realized that with retirement coming up in a few years, we can't really afford the payments. I just stared at them, not touching the folder. So, you're selling the house? Or Allison is going to make the payments. My mother pushed the folder closer. We need you to take over the payments, sweetheart. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. My head spun. I finally opened the folder. Mortgage papers for an $800,000 home. A $750,000 mortgage. The monthly payment? Over $4,000. This is a joke, right? I looked up at their dead serious faces. You can't be serious. You want me to pay for Allison's house? A house that costs nearly $1 million. You have a good job, Cassie, my father said, his tone hardening. You've always been good with money. You have more than enough saved up. More than enough? I practically yelled. I've been saving for years to buy my own place. A modest condo I can actually afford, not a mansion in West Hills. Family helps family, my mother insisted, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled it back. Allison needs stability to get her life together. You know how she struggles. Where is Allison really? I demanded, the anger boiling. Does she even know you're asking me this? She's really in San Diego, my father said. And yes, she knows we're talking to you about helping with the house. So, she was on vacation while they asked me to fund her luxury home. The sheer audacity. Why isn't she here for this conversation? She was nervous about how you'd react, my mother admitted. She knows you've always been judgmental about her choices. I sat in stunned silence. My parents had bought my irresponsible sister a house they couldn't afford and now expected me to foot the bill because I had been responsible with my own money. It was an insult. A betrayal. No, I finally said, my voice firm despite the tremble inside. Absolutely not. I will not pay for Allison's house. Cassandra Marie Wilson, my father boomed, using my full name, the one that meant I was in deep trouble as a child. You have more money than you need. Your sister deserves a nice place to live just like you do. I've worked for every single dollar I have. I shot back. I've saved and sacrificed for years. Allison has never held a job for more than 8 months. She's never saved a dime in her life. That's not fair, my mother protested. Your sister has different strengths. Not everyone is good with money like you are. Being good with money isn't some innate talent, Mom. I retorted, tears stinging my eyes. It's about making responsible choices, day after day, year after year. Something you've never expected Allison to do. The conversation devolved into chaos. My father lectured about family obligation, his voice growing louder. My mother started crying, claiming I'd always been jealous of her special bond with Allison. They dredged up every favor they'd ever done for me, conveniently forgetting the decades of self-sufficiency I'd maintained while they bankrolled my sister's every whim. If you don't help your sister, my father finally threatened, his face red with rage, you're not the daughter we raised you to be. I stood up, shaking with anger and disbelief. Maybe I'm not, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Maybe I'm better than that. I walked out without another word, leaving the mortgage papers untouched on the table, the untouched lasagna, the shattered remains of what I thought was my family. For 3 days, I ignored their incessant calls and texts, each one more guilt-laden than the last. Your sister is heartbroken. We raised you to care about family after all we've done for you. I threw myself into work, trying to process the gut-wrenching realization. Had my parents always seen me as nothing more than a financial resource for Allison? Had they been cultivating my responsible habits all along, just waiting for the opportune moment to tap into my savings? On the fourth day, a knock at my door. Allison. Her eyes were puffy, as if she'd been crying. Against my better judgment, I let her in. Cassie, please, she started, the moment the door closed. You have to help me. I love this house so much, and I had no idea Mom and Dad were going to ask you to pay for all of it. I thought they were just going to ask you to help a little bit. She looked around my small apartment, a hint of disdain in her eyes. It's not like you're using your money for much anyway. You live like you're still in college. I live within my means, I corrected her, my voice tight. And I've been saving to buy my own place. But you could still help me and do that. Allison insisted. You make so much money at your fancy tech job. Something in her phrasing snagged me. Wait a minute. You said you had no idea they were going to ask me to pay for all of it. So you didn't know they were going to ask me for money. Allison's face flushed. Well, I mean, we talked about it a little. You were in on this from the beginning. I realized, the betrayal twisting another knife. You knew they were going to ask me to pay for your house. Not the whole mortgage, she protested. Just, help out until I get on my feet. Find a better job. You've been getting on your feet for 10 years, Allison. I finally snapped. When are you actually going to stand on them? Our argument escalated, a whirlwind of accusations and tears, until Allison stormed out, slamming my door so hard my neighbor peeked his head out to check if everything was okay. That evening, fueled by fresh anger, I finally answered my parents' call. Cassandra, my father began, formally. We need to discuss the situation with your sister's house. There is no situation, I replied, my voice steady. I'm not paying for Allison's mortgage. End of discussion. We've already put down a substantial down payment, my mother chimed in, sounding desperate. We took it from our retirement fund because we believed you would help with the monthly payments. So I said, incredulous, you made a massive financial decision based on money I never offered or agreed to give. That is not my responsibility to fix. We're family, my father insisted. Family takes care of each other. Funny how that principle only applies when Allison needs something, or when you need something for Allison, I pointed out. It never applied when I was working 2 jobs in college, or eating ramen 5 nights a week to pay off my student loans. The conversation devolved again, their tone growing increasingly hostile as they realized I wouldn't cave. You'll regret this selfishness, my father threatened before hanging up. A week later, Aunt Eleanor, my mother's sister, called from Eugene. Cassie, honey, what's this I hear about you refusing to help your sister? She asked, without preamble. I explained the situation, bracing for another lecture. Those fools. Eleanor sighed instead. I told Julia this was a terrible idea. Did you know they emptied their retirement accounts for Allison's down payment? Nearly $300,000 gone. My parents were in their early 60s. They had decimated their retirement savings, and now they expected me to take on an additional financial burden to fix their poor decision. The revelation stunned me, leaving me cold. Over the next few weeks, the family divide grew. Relatives took sides. Most supported my parents and Allison. I received passive-aggressive emails from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. My grandmother called to express her disappointment in my selfish attitude. Only Aunt Eleanor and Uncle Philip stood by me, understanding the truly unreasonable position my parents had put me in. Concerned, I scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor, Gabriela Martinez. She listened, alarm growing on her face. You need to protect yourself legally, Gabriela advised. Given how determined your parents seem, I wouldn't be surprised if they try something else to get your money. I thought she was being paranoid. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. My hands shook as I opened it. Legal papers. My parents were suing me for $500,000. Their claim? That I had verbally agreed years ago to help with family expenses in return for their investment in my education and future. They claimed my entire financial success was contingent on their support, and therefore I owed them recompense now that they needed it. It was a lie. A complete, audacious fabrication. But there it was, in black and white, with a court date set for just 6 weeks away. The panic attack hit me the moment I finished reading. My chest tightened, my vision blurred. I couldn't catch my breath. Sliding down against my apartment wall, the papers clutched in my shaking hand, gasping for air. When I finally could breathe, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and spent the day researching attorneys. By afternoon, I had an emergency appointment with Lawrence Thompson, a family law specialist. Lawrence's office was professional but cozy, lined with law books. He was an older man, salt and pepper hair, reading glasses perched on his nose. He reviewed the documents. "This is," he began, then paused, rubbing his eyes. "This is quite, frankly, one of the more absurd lawsuits I've seen in my 30 years of practice." But absurd doesn't mean harmless. Even frivolous lawsuits can be dangerous if not properly defended. "So, they can't really win, right?" I asked, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "It's highly unlikely," he said. "Their claim of a verbal agreement is difficult to prove without documentation. However," he cautioned, "family court can sometimes be unpredictable, especially when emotional appeals are involved. We need to build a strong defense." Over the next few days, a disturbing discovery came to light. My parents had falsified documents. Backdated emails and letters, supposedly from me, acknowledging a debt to them for raising me and putting me through college. "These are completely fake," I told Lawrence, staring in disbelief at the documents he'd received through discovery. "I never wrote any of these." "I suspected as much," Lawrence replied grimly. "The good news is that forgery will completely undermine their case. The bad news is that your parents have just committed fraud, which could have serious consequences for them." The realization that my own parents would go so far as to commit forgery to take my money left me numb. What had happened to the people who raised me, who taught me right from wrong? Were they always capable of this, or had their devotion to Allison corrupted them so completely? I threw myself into preparing our defense. I gathered bank statements showing I'd supported myself financially since college. Old emails thanking them for birthday gifts, but clearly indicating all financial support had ended after high school. My college financial aid records, proving my education was primarily funded by scholarships and my own work. The process took a brutal toll. Insomnia became my constant companion. My appetite vanished, and I lost 7 pounds in 2 weeks. At work, I made careless mistakes, drawing concerned looks from my manager. My coworker, Heather, noticed my deterioration and invited me to lunch. Over sandwiches I mostly picked at, I confided in her about the lawsuit. My parents did something similar, Heather revealed, surprising me. Not a lawsuit, but they emptied my college fund to pay for my brother's gambling debts. I know how it feels to be the responsible one who gets punished for it. Her understanding was a lifeline in a sea of judgment. Most other people I told seemed to subtly ask what I might have done to cause such a rift, as if parents suing their child must somehow be the child's fault. A week before the court date, I ran into Allison at a coffee shop. I hadn't even known she was in Seattle. She was wearing expensive new boots and carrying a designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Are you happy now?" she demanded, loudly enough that other customers turned to look. "You're tearing our family apart with your selfishness." "I'm selfish." I kept my voice low despite my simmering rage. "You're living in a house our parents can't afford while they sue me for money I earned. How exactly am I the selfish one here? They've given up everything for me, and you won't help at all." Allison shot back. "Do you know Dad's talking about coming out of retirement to pay the mortgage? Then sell it," I suggested. "Get a place you can actually afford." "I'm not selling my dream home just because you're being stingy," she snapped. "I deserve that house. I deserve nice things too, Cassie. Deserving has nothing to do with it. It's about what you can afford." "I can afford it if you help," she insisted, as if this logic made perfect sense. I left the coffee shop, shaking with anger. But the encounter provided one important piece of information. Allison had already moved into the house. Despite the uncertain mortgage situation, she was counting on winning the lawsuit or wearing me down. The day of the first court appearance arrived. I wore a conservative navy suit, low heels, my hair pulled back in a neat bun. Lawrence had advised me to look professional, but not flashy. Walking into the courtroom, seeing my parents at the opposite table, felt surreal. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes, but Dad stared at me coldly. They looked like strangers, not the people who'd raised me, taught me to ride a bike, bandaged my scraped knees. Judge Catherine Martinez, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, studied us critically. Her initial questions immediately revealed her skepticism. "Let me understand this correctly," she said, reviewing the documents. "The plaintiffs, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, are suing their daughter for $500,000 based on an alleged verbal agreement made when she was how old?" "When she left for college, Your Honor," my parents' attorney, Benjamin Russell, answered smoothly. "And this agreement was never put in writing. It was a family matter, Your Honor, a matter of trust between parents and child." Judge Martinez's eyebrow rose slightly. "I see. And the defendants have submitted evidence that these supposedly supporting emails are forgeries. We dispute that characterization," Benjamin replied. "There may be some confusion about dates and content." "Confusion," the judge repeated dryly, "about who wrote the emails and when." "Interesting choice of words, counselor." The first day in court made it clear this wouldn't be simple. My parents' attorney painted me as an ungrateful daughter who had benefited from their sacrifices only to abandon them. Lawrence methodically presented evidence of my financial independence and the falsified documents. By the end of the day, Judge Martinez seemed increasingly troubled. Before adjourning, she looked directly at my parents. "I have one question I'd like the plaintiffs to consider before we continue tomorrow," she said. "Did you ever consider your daughter might have her own financial goals?" My father answered without hesitation. "She has more than she needs. Allison needs it more." The judge made a note, her expression unreadable. "We'll resume at 9 tomorrow morning." The courtroom felt colder on the second day. I sat rigidly beside Lawrence, avoiding looking at my parents. Their attorney, Benjamin Russell, arranged papers with a confidence that worried me. Judge Martinez entered, her face giving nothing away. "We'll continue with testimony today. Plaintiff's counsel, call your first witness." Benjamin called my father. Donald Wilson took the oath, looking distinguished in his best suit. He spoke clearly, confidently, about how he and my mother had invested everything in my future. "We made sacrifices so Cassandra could succeed," he testified. "We drove an old car so she could have the best educational opportunities. We took her to museums and science camps. We paid for advanced math tutoring." Benjamin guided him through a narrative that made my entire childhood sound like an expensive training program for my future earning potential. "And was there an understanding about how this investment would be repaid?" Benjamin asked. "Absolutely," my father answered without hesitation. Cassandra agreed that once she was established in her career, she would help support the family financially. She specifically promised to help her sister if needed. It was a complete fabrication, delivered with such conviction that I saw a juror nodding along. When Lawrence cross-examined my father, he started gently. "Mr. Wilson, did you pay for your daughter's college tuition?" "We contributed," my father hedged. Lawrence presented my scholarship letters and financial aid documents. These records show that 90% of Cassandra's education was funded through scholarships and her own work-study jobs. Your contribution amounted to approximately $5,000 over 4 years. Is that correct? My father shifted uncomfortably. The dollar amount doesn't reflect the emotional support we provided. "I'm asking about financial contributions, sir," Lawrence pressed. $5,000 total. Yes or no? Approximately. Yes, my father admitted reluctantly. Lawrence then presented my bank records, showing how I had supported myself since graduation, evidence of my student loans that I paid off, and documentation of my modest lifestyle. "Would you characterize your daughter as financially irresponsible, Mr. Wilson?" "No," my father conceded. "Cassie has always been good with money. Yet you believe she owes you $500,000 because family takes care of family," my father insisted, his voice rising. "She has the means to help her sister, and she refuses out of spite." My mother testified next, her testimony more emotional than factual. She cried several times, talking about her worries for Allison's future, how hurt she was by my abandonment. She spoke about my sister's sensitive nature and creative spirit that made practical matters like steady employment difficult. "Allison needs stability to flourish," she insisted. "This house is her chance to finally find her footing." Under cross-examination, Lawrence was respectful but persistent. "Mrs. Wilson, how many times has Allison held a job for more than 1 year?" My mother hesitated. "She's had challenges with employment." "So the answer is never correct?" "Not once in the 12 years since she graduated high school." "Different people have different paths," my mother replied defensively. Indeed, they do, Lawrence agreed. And would you say you've supported Allison financially throughout her adult life? We've helped her when needed. According to these bank records, Lawrence said, presenting exhibits, you and your husband have provided Allison with approximately $375,000 in direct financial support since she turned 18. Is that accurate? The courtroom murmured at the figure. My mother looked down at her hands. That sounds about right. And during that same period, how much financial support did you provide to Cassandra? Cassie didn't need our help, my mother replied, as if this were a failing on my part. So the answer is $0. Correct? Yes, she admitted quietly. When it was my turn, I was nervous, but determined to speak my truth. I explained how I had worked my way through college, built my career through consistent effort, and saved carefully for years toward homeownership. Did you ever promise your parents repayment for raising you? Lawrence asked. No, I said firmly. I've always been grateful for the opportunities they provided, but there was never any agreement that I would financially support them or my sister in adulthood. What about these emails they presented as evidence? Lawrence handed me the printouts of the forgeries. I examined them carefully. These are fake. I never wrote these. You can see the inconsistencies in how my name is spelled in the signature block, and the email address shown here wasn't even my email address during the dates claimed. Benjamin's cross-examination was aggressive, designed to provoke an emotional response. Isn't it true that you've always resented your sister? He demanded. No, I replied calmly. I love Allison, but I don't believe enabling her financial irresponsibility is good for her or for our family. So, you admit you're judging your sister's lifestyle choices. I'm making observations based on a pattern of behavior over many years, I corrected. Benjamin switched tactics. Your parents gave you life, raised you, clothed you, fed you. Do you believe you owe them nothing in return? I believe I owe them respect, love, and gratitude, I replied. I don't believe I owe them $500,000 to buy my sister a luxury home she can't afford. The most revealing moment came when Benjamin called a surprise witness, Allison herself. She entered, wearing a conservative dress, her usual flashy style subdued. She tearfully testified about how much the house meant to her and how my refusal was destroying our family. I just want a chance to start over, she said, dabbing at her eyes. A stable home would give me that chance. During cross-examination, Lawrence was gentle but direct. Miss Wilson, are you currently employed? I'm between jobs at the moment, Allison admitted. How many job applications have you submitted in the past month? I'm taking some time to figure out my next career move, she hedged. So none, Lawrence clarified. Not yet, she conceded reluctantly. And this house in West Hills, how much is the mortgage payment? I'm not sure exactly, Allison said, looking uncomfortable. My parents handle that. It's $4,300 per month, Lawrence informed her. Without steady employment, how did you plan to make these payments? Cassie was supposed to help until I got established, Allison replied, as if this had been a firm agreement. Did you and your sister ever discuss this arrangement directly? No, but my parents said they would take care of it. One final question, Lawrence said. If you had to choose between keeping this specific house and healing the rift with your sister, which would you choose? Allison hesitated, looking trapped. That's not a fair question. I shouldn't have to choose. Nevertheless, it's the question before you, Lawrence pressed. I deserve that house, Allison finally said, her voice hardening. Cassie can afford to help me keep it if she wasn't so selfish. I felt a strange sense of clarity at her words. The sister I loved was in there somewhere, but years of enablement had buried her beneath layers of entitlement and self-centeredness. After a full day of testimony, Judge Martinez called for final arguments. Benjamin made an impassioned plea about family obligation and moral responsibility. Lawrence's closing argument was more measured. Your Honor, this case isn't about family loyalty or love. It's about whether an adult child is legally obligated to fund their siblings' lifestyle. The evidence clearly shows there was never any agreement. The plaintiffs have resorted to fabricating evidence because no legitimate evidence exists. This lawsuit is an attempt to use the legal system to enforce a family expectation that has no basis in law or equity. Judge Martinez listened attentively. I'll take this matter under advisement, she announced. We'll reconvene next Friday at 9 a.m. for my ruling. Court is adjourned. As we filed out, my mother tried to approach me, but Lawrence gently steered me away. No conversations with the plaintiffs outside of court, he murmured. Through the glass doors, I saw my father arguing with their attorney in the hallway, his face contorted with rage. Whatever was happening, it didn't look like the confidence of someone expecting to win. How do you think it went? I asked Lawrence once we were safely in his car. As well as could be expected, he replied carefully. Judge Martinez is thorough and fair. The forgeries hurt their case significantly, and your sister's testimony probably didn't help them either. But we have a week to wait. Try to focus on your normal routine if you can. Normal routine. As if anything could ever be normal again. That week was the longest of my life. I went back to work. But I might as well have been a ghost haunting my desk. My mind constantly replayed the trial. My manager, Francis, noticed, and when he asked if everything was okay, I finally broke down. Take whatever time you need, he said, surprisingly understanding. Family issues are the hardest. My performance was suffering. I made coding errors, zoned out in meetings. Sleep became a distant memory. My apartment, usually neat, devolved into chaos. On Wednesday, 3 days before the verdict, I finally accepted that I needed help. I called a therapist Heather had recommended, Dr. Victoria Chin, and got an emergency appointment. Her office was warm and inviting. She listened without judgment. What you're experiencing is a form of betrayal trauma, she explained. When the people who are supposed to love and protect you become a source of harm, it shakes your entire foundation. Your reaction is completely normal. Will I ever be able to trust them again? I asked, my voice raw. Or anyone? That's something we'll work through together, she promised. But right now, let's focus on getting you through this immediate crisis. That evening, an unexpected text from Allison. I didn't know they were going to sue you. I swear. It was the first hint of remorse she'd shown. I wasn't ready to respond, but I saved the message. Maybe there was still a glimmer of my real sister underneath the entitlement. Friday morning arrived with a sense of inevitability. I dressed carefully, met Lawrence at the courthouse. Whatever happens today, he told me, remember that you stood up for yourself with dignity and truth. That counts for something. The courtroom was more crowded than I expected. My parents sat with Benjamin, my father looking confident, my mother nervously twisting a tissue. Allison wasn't there, but several other relatives were behind my parents, including my grandmother. On my side, the bench was empty until the last minute when Aunt Eleanor, Uncle Philip, and Heather slipped in. Their presence brought an unexpected lump to my throat. Judge Martinez entered, her face impassive. In the case of Wilson versus Wilson, I have reviewed all testimony and evidence presented. This is, without doubt, one of the more troubling family disputes to come before my court. She looked directly at my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, your claim rests on an alleged verbal agreement that your daughter would provide financial support to you and her sister in return for your investment in her upbringing and education. You have provided no credible evidence that such an agreement ever existed. The emails you submitted as evidence have been proven to be fabrications, a serious matter that could result in charges of perjury and fraud. My father's face paled. My mother began to cry silently. Beyond the legal issues, Judge Martinez continued, I find the underlying premise of your lawsuit disturbing. Parenthood is not a financial investment with expected monetary returns. Children do not owe their parents repayment for doing what parents are morally and legally obligated to do, provide for their children's basic needs. She turned to me. Miss Wilson, the evidence shows you have been financially independent since college, working diligently to build your career and savings. You have no legal obligation to fund a house purchase for your sister, regardless of family expectations. Looking back at my parents, she delivered her verdict. This lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, the plaintiffs will pay the defendant's legal fees in full. She paused, removing her glasses. As a judge, my role ends with the legal verdict. But as a person who has sat in this courtroom for 20 years watching families tear themselves apart, I would be remiss not to add this. Whatever happens when you leave this courtroom today, remember that some damage cannot be undone with apologies alone. Trust, once broken, must be rebuilt brick by brick. I sincerely hope you find a way forward that honors the true meaning of family, which has nothing to do with financial transactions and everything to do with mutual respect and love. With that, she struck her gavel and left the bench. My parents' reaction was immediate and shocking. My father stood and shouted at their attorney, his face contorted with rage. "You said this was a sure thing. You said she'd have to settle." Court officers moved toward him. My mother collapsed in tears, while relatives gathered around them, throwing accusing glances my way. Lawrence ushered me out a side door to avoid the scene. In the hallway, Aunt Eleanor hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself," she whispered. "Your parents will regret this madness when they calm down." But they didn't calm down. The fallout was swift and far-reaching. My parents faced not only my legal fees, but also the prospect of a house they couldn't afford. Family gatherings were now divided into camps. Holiday plans were in ruins. Some relatives stopped speaking to me entirely, while others cut ties with my parents over their behavior. 2 weeks after the verdict, I returned to my apartment to find my door ajar. Inside, drawers were emptied onto the floor, furniture overturned, and "selfish bitch" spray-painted on my living room wall. Nothing valuable was taken. This was about sending a message. The police officer suggested it was likely someone who knew me. "Any family disputes recently?" he asked, not knowing how loaded that question was. I didn't say it was Allison, but in my heart, I knew. The handwriting on the wall matched her loopy style. And who else would be this angry? After filing a police report, I stayed with Heather for a few nights while my landlord repaired the damage. I considered a restraining order, but couldn't bring myself to take that final step against my own family, despite Lawrence's strong recommendation. A month after the verdict, Aunt Eleanor called with news. "Your parents are selling their house," she told me. The mortgage on Allison's place, plus the legal fees, pushed them to the brink of bankruptcy. They're downsizing to a condo. "What about Allison's dream house?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "On the market as of yesterday," Aunt Eleanor replied. "They're using the proceeds to pay off their debts." Allison is furious, of course. "She's staying with your cousin Patricia for now." I felt no satisfaction at the news, only a hollow sadness for what my family had become. The house that had torn us apart would soon belong to strangers, while the real damage remained. 6 months passed. Seattle's summer faded into a rainy autumn, and I settled into a new rhythm of life. Weekly sessions with Dr. Victoria helped me process the trauma. At first, I talked about little else, reliving the betrayal and anger. Gradually, we expanded, exploring patterns in my family dynamics that went back generations. "Your role as the responsible one didn't start when you were an adult," Dr. Victoria pointed out. "From what you've described, you were parentified from a young age, taking on adult levels of responsibility, while Allison was perpetually infantilized. But why?" I asked the question that had haunted me for months. Why treat us so differently? "Sometimes parents project their own unresolved issues onto their children," she explained. "Your mother might have seen herself in Allison while you reminded her of responsibilities." She resented. "It doesn't excuse their behavior, but understanding it might help you heal." Slowly, I began rebuilding. I moved forward with my original plan to buy my own home, closing on a modest 2-bedroom condo near a park. It wasn't the luxury house in West Hills that had caused so much strife, but it was mine, bought with money I had earned and saved, a symbol of my independence and resilience. On a crisp October morning, I was sorting through emails when one subject line made me freeze. "Can we talk, Allison?" I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won out. The message was surprisingly humble. "Cassie, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I wouldn't blame you if you deleted this immediately, but if you're still reading, I'd like to meet somewhere public to talk. No demands, no drama. I promise. Just talk. Let me know if you're willing." Against my better judgment, and after discussing it thoroughly with Dr. Victoria, I agreed to meet my sister at a coffee shop equidistant between us. I arrived early, chose a table with a clear view of the entrance and exit, and ordered a latte I was too nervous to drink. Allison arrived precisely on time, a punctuality so uncharacteristic it spoke volumes. She looked different. Gone were the designer clothes, the perfectly styled hair. She wore jeans, a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. She looked younger, more like the sister I remembered from before adult responsibilities had divided us. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the chair. "I honestly wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," I admitted. We sat in awkward silence until our drinks arrived. Then Allison took a deep breath and met my eyes directly. I'm sorry, Cassie. I'm so sorry for everything. For the lawsuit, for the house, for the way I treated you, for the apartment. She faltered. Yes, that was me. I was drunk and so angry. It was inexcusable. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my guard still up. Because I'm finally getting help, she replied. I've been seeing a financial counselor for 3 months now and a therapist. After everything fell apart with the house, I had to move in with Patricia, and she gave me an ultimatum: get professional help or find somewhere else to live. So, you're apologizing because Patricia forced you to? No, Allison shook her head vehemently. I'm apologizing because I see things clearly for the first time in years. My counselor, Hannah, had me track every dollar I've spent for the past 5 years. Do you know how much Mom and Dad gave me during that time? Over $200,000. And I have nothing to show for it. Nothing. She stirred her coffee absently. I've never had to face consequences before. Mom and Dad always fixed everything for me. When they couldn't fix the house situation, when they lost their own home because of me, something finally clicked. This isn't who I want to be. I listened cautiously, wanting to believe her, but wary of being hurt again. I have a job now, she continued. Nothing glamorous, just administrative work at a dental office, but I've kept it for 4 months, and I'm good at it. I have my own tiny apartment. I'm on a strict budget for the first time in my life. What about Mom and Dad? I asked the question I'd been avoiding. Allison's face fell. They're still angry at you, at me, at the world. They lost almost everything because of the choices they made for me. Dad had to go back to work part-time. They're living in a small rental condo now. Have they gotten any help, counseling, anything? No, Allison sighed. They still believe they did nothing wrong. They think the judge was biased against them. Dad talks about appealing the verdict sometimes, though they can't afford another legal battle. We talked for nearly 2 hours, carefully navigating the minefield of our shared past. Allison didn't ask for money or forgiveness, just the chance to begin rebuilding some kind of relationship. As we prepared to leave, she handed me a sealed envelope. What's this? I asked. The first installment, she explained. I'm paying you back for the damage to your apartment. It's not much, just $200, but I'll send more each month until it's paid off. Hannah helped me work it into my budget. The gesture moved me more than any apology could have. It was the first time she had ever taken concrete responsibility for her actions. I'm not ready to forgive everything, I told her honestly. But I'm willing to try building something new. Slowly. We agreed to text occasionally, perhaps meet for coffee again in a few weeks. It was a tiny step, but an important one. While my relationship with Allison showed tentative signs of healing, I had no contact with my parents. Through the family grapevine, I heard they had downsized dramatically, selling many possessions to pay debts. My father, who had proudly retired at 60, was now working part-time as a consultant. My mother had taken a job at a local bookstore, her first paid employment in over 30 years. Their situation saddened me, but I recognized it as the natural consequence of their choices, not my responsibility to fix. Dr. Victoria helped me work through the guilt I still occasionally felt, reminding me that establishing boundaries wasn't the same as abandoning family. Healthy boundaries aren't walls, she would say. They're fences with gates that you control. In January, I joined a support group for people dealing with family financial trauma. Our moderator, Marcus, had experienced similar issues with his brothers. The group became a safe space to share experiences without judgment, to learn from others who truly understood the unique pain of financial betrayal by family. Through the group and through deepening friendships with people like Heather, I began building what I thought of as my chosen family. People who respected boundaries, who gave without expectation of return, who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. By spring, I was finally sleeping through the night again. My work performance improved, earning me a promotion I had once thought the lawsuit stress might cost me. I planted flowers on my condo balcony and joined a hiking group that explored trails around Seattle on weekends. The lawsuit had changed me, but not in the ways my parents had intended. Instead of draining my resources to enable my sister, it had strengthened my resolve to live authentically and set healthy boundaries. I began volunteering once a month at a community center, teaching basic financial literacy to young adults, turning my painful experience into something that might help others avoid similar situations. 1 year after the verdict, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, reflecting on the journey. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. I still felt a pang when friends talked about their holiday plans with family or shared stories of supportive parents. But I had survived, grown, and even flourished in the aftermath of betrayal. The most important lesson I learned wasn't about money at all. It was about defining family on my own terms. About recognizing that love without respect isn't really love at all. And about the power of standing firm in your truth, even when those who should support you the most are trying to tear you down. Family wounds heal slowly, if they heal at all. But I found peace in accepting that some relationships may never be restored to what they once were, or what I imagined them to be. The space that acceptance creates allows room for new connections, new definitions of family, new ways of giving and receiving love that don't come with price tags attached. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure over money or expectations? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you at all, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories about navigating difficult family dynamics. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for your well-being. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength on your own journey, whatever it may be.